Boat cruise towards Chicago River, the iconic river with the bridges, and now you see the Trump Tower. And Chicago has been the home of skyscrapers because the song, which is the architect for the Burj Khalifa, is based out here. So this is a spectacular Chicago on the Chicago River.
Bright Star is United States Coast Guard inspected past your vessel, which means we meet and exceed all safety requirements on board. In a highly unlikely event of emergency, we ask that you please follow the instructions of the crew. If you have any questions while on the way, feel free to ask the crew. The Bright Star is equipped with 355 adult, 110 children. They can be found in the bins along the sides of the boat, both on up and the lower level. The crew make sure you get one in case of emergency. While underway, we ask that you don't lean yourself or any of your personal belongings over the side of the boat. No standing or kneeling the seats or the benches, and absolutely no smoking or vaping on board. Feel free to stand up, move about the vessel as you please. Just be mindful of those around you. Try not to block the view of others. Please do not let children move out the vessel unattended. The stairway back there will lead you down to the lower level. The lower levels where you find additional seating. You can also find our heads or restrooms. They're to the right-hand side. Moving forward, just past the bar. Rainey is your bartender down there. She can make sure if any type of mixed drink you need, beer, wine, soda, chips, pretzel, bottled water. Hot drinks as well, coffee, tea, hot apple cider, hot cocoa, and a few holiday drinks as well. The bar is card only, but feel free to visit that bar anytime during the tour. We just ask that if you must take a personal phone call or want to have a loud conversation, please do so on the lower level. So you interrupt anyone around you listen to the tour? Let's go for a boat ride.
Architecture at IIT on the south side. So a bit about how we're going to do this today. Right now we're going to pull away from Michigan Avenue, head west on the main branch of the Chicago River till we come to Wolf Point, where the three branches come together. Main branch, North branch, and South branch. At Wolf Point, going to swing left, and then the South branch of the river for a bit to about River City at Polk Street. Turn around there, have a decent view of the downtown skyline, back to the main branch and turning basin, redock here in about an hour. Going to notice a wide variety of styles of buildings and architecture along the river and throughout the skyline. Now you will notice a number of Art Deco buildings. Art Deco buildings were mainly built back in the 1920s and 30s. Connected to the Art Deco design, streamlined verticality, limestone cladding, setbacks of the building rises. The narrow building to our left at the corner of Michigan and Wacker, an Art Deco building, 1928. You're going to notice a number of modern, international type buildings, almost black box modern. These type of buildings really came to being after the Second World War and lasted late 1970s and early 80s. But let's get started. You're near Michigan Avenue. Here to our right coming up, the elegant white glazed terracotta-clad Wrigley building. The park on the river is 1921, northern half 1924, established in between at the back in 1931. Spanish revival in its design, some French Renaissance elements. It's clad with 6 different shades of white glazed terracotta, fireproof baked clay. This is the building that Chewing Gum built, designed by Graham Anderson, Probst and White. Another architecture firm of Perkins and Will and Don called that building home. Double-decker Michigan Avenue Bridge of 1920. The tall reflective glass building right here in front with the spire on top is Chicago's second tallest building. The height does include the very top and tip of the spire. Trump International Hotel and Tower, designed by Adrian Smith, formerly of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. A pretty good example of the contextual style. The building fits on the site and surrounding. The building itself ascends in height. You have setbacks at different levels that relate to the roof lines of surrounding buildings. First setback to the roof line of Wrigley. Second setback for a building across the river. And third setback for the building next door. Daytime hours, the glass is bright and reflective. When dark, it becomes clear and transparent to see directly in that space. You will then notice the floors 4 through 12, the parking garage for the building. During evening hours, see these columns rising up behind the glass. 16 and 30, the hotel space, and then to the top are condominiums. It was built between 2005 and 2009. To our left, coming up with that dome on top, initially called the Jewelers Building, completed back in 1926, the house of large jewelry firms. Those tempianos on the corners, the design behind the water tanks to control the original sprinkler system. And that dome on top, late 30s, early 40s, was a restaurant and bar called the Stratosphere. It's also room them in the building first opened. There's a speakeasy in that dome on top, often visited by Al Capone. The Al Capone part is a rumor, but it's a rumor that I spread. The building itself sold last year for $35.5 million. To our right, coming up, steel and glass Miesian and modernist black box was in fact designed by one of the fathers of modern and international architecture, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, whose very famous motto was "Less is more." Mies came to Chicago from Germany back in the late 30s, became head of architecture at IIT. He designed the Seagram Building in New York City, TD Center in Toronto, Lafayette Park in Detroit, and the Barcelona Chairs. The building to our right is his final project, completed back in 1972. He passed away in 1969. As we near State Street to our right coming up, commonly referred to in the twin Corn Cob Towers. In reality, we're going to have Marina City. Built between 1960 and 64, designed by architect Bertrand Goldberg, who in fact went to Germany to study Mies van der Rohe at a school called the Bauhaus. So around here, we're going to have teacher and student side by side. About 18 floors of parking, a proportion of condominiums. Former office building, now a hotel, and former theater, now the House of Blues. Small shops and restaurants on site, marina at the base. Virtually a city within a city, an introvert's paradise. A movie came out back in 1980 called The Hunter, starring Steve McQueen. There's a car chase of the parking lot of this West building. There's a car shot into the river. They stopped for that movie. Well, the parking is valet. One thing I want you to do is use your eyes, see what you like, see what you don't like. I tend to like gaps and spaces. Notice the space to our right coming up, being framed and hemmed in by the textures on these three buildings. First, dark tinted bay windows, Western Chicago River North, 87. The background, the flat reflective glass and horizontal banding, 2009. And to our right, vertical aluminum mullions on 321 North Clark Street, 1988, Skidmore, Owens and Merrill. 6.5 years ago, they built out 35,000 square feet, a restaurant space on 4 levels. As we clear front, here to our right coming up, this beautiful red brick and terracotta clad structure that runs horizontally along the river in the Prairie School design. The Reed Murdoch Warehouse Building, 1914. Architect George C. Nemens. You have the clock tower top center, designed behind the water tank. When built, perfectly symmetrical. But now notice the left-hand side of the western half is 1 bay shorter than the right. And that is because when they built this bridge in front across the river back in 1928 and widened the roadway, they demolished the westernmost bay and reclad what was left to look like it originally did. Rising up 785 feet, the modern, glassy, and reflective 300 North LaSalle, a Picard Chilton Architects out of New Haven, Connecticut. Clad with an abundance of aluminum. A very nice two-level riverfront. Steakhouse is yummy. Having a brand new restaurant at river level. Around here, I like the contrast between 2009 modern, the old building next door. A pretty good example of Chicago school style of architecture, the tripartite design. Think of a Greek column that have a base, shaft, capital on top. The base of the building visually anchors the structure of the ground. The shaft draws your eye up. The corners are on the top to help finish things off. A tea and coffee warehouse, 1912. Glass penthouse, 1984. You go to notice base, shaft, capital on many buildings, old and new, including this huge and ginormous building to our right coming up called the Merchandise Mart by Graham Anderson, probes to the white, Art Deco style. Limestone cladding, streamlined verticality, setbacks of the building rises. But completed in 1930, at that time, this was the world's largest commercial building, having more than 4 million square feet of space within its walls. So mass, like 17, 18 years ago, the building had its own zip code, 60654, now being shared throughout the area. There are those 8 bronze busts. They represent some of the Prince merchants of the United States, including Philemon, Woolworth, Wanamaker, Marshall Field, and a few more. The building was commissioned for and by the president of the Marshall Field organization. It was going to be the wholesale warehouse and distribution center. The plans were not fully materialized because 1930, country was at the height of the Great Depression. They sold the building in 1945 for a fraction of its value to Joseph Kennedy, Father President John Kennedy. They sold the building back in 1998. Now at Wolf Point, this whole area's transitioned dramatically over the past decade. So 2020, 2023, in the gap 2016, in front 2016, 2017, right corner to our left 2020. So 6 new buildings around here for the past decade. As we transition from Main Branch to South, right in front on the plaza, a pretty cool sculpture that is called Constellation by Santiago Calatrava. Dark mirrored building here to our left, lantern on top, just sits on a very historic site. Back in 1860, a temporary building stood on that site called the Wigwam, like the very first ever Republican National Convention where Abraham Lincoln was nominated. Chicago has 4 double-decker drawbridges. The 4, Lake Street in front was the oldest, 1916. Now, coming up to our right, the building that draws everyone's attention, total engineering diva of this area, 150 North Riverside by Getch Partners, architecture firm headquartered here. The building itself, a pretty good example of form follows function. The site helps to dictate the shape and design of the building. So here, a very slender piece of land to work with. You're wedged in between a river and train tracks. At a conventional office building been designed where the columns come straight down on this side that was slammed along the river's edge, on the other side of the train tracks. This is called a core-supported building. The main central concrete core takes on the weight and load of the tower. Those diagonal beams transfer that load. Example, pull my arm up from my body, push down on my hand, it's going to fall right to my thigh. If there's a bar from my palm to my waist, you can't push down. Same general concept with the diagonals. 1.5 acre landscape public plaza, some conference and meeting rooms, the restaurant for anyone. Have time while you're here, walk through that space, and we'll tell you more about that building on the return trip. As we clear Randolph, here to our left coming up, 6.5 years ago, the 5-story building from the mid-1950s. Thankfully, it's been torn down, and its wake now rises a 55-story tall building, 110 North Wacker by Getch Partners. Same firm, with a very cool base. Building to our left, also a very dynamic base. Finished in 2020. For this one, last I have read, about 90% leased up. Right now, largest tenant is Bank of America. It's more than 500,000 square feet. Here to our left is Bank of America Tower. And here's a picture of the building that stood on the side to our left that I took before it got torn down. I don't miss it, and neither do you, because it was ugly. As we clear Washington and enter this Art Deco Canyon, to our left coming up, the Civic Opera Building by Graham Anderson, probes to the white, limestone cladding, setbacks of the building rises. Do notice it kind of reminds me of a giant chair or a throne. Seat portion of the theater and stage, the wings of the building are your armrests to power your backrest. To the not misspelled building, that's Latin. Chiseled here in my lifetime. Blank wall to our left, bit more than 20 years ago. Some minor consideration about perhaps showing movies on the wall for watching the plaza from across the way. Nothing materialized. Gonna have some carvings here and more carvings above of comedy and tragedy. Was tragic, this $20 million building opened up November 4th, 1929. A few days after the stock market crash, led to the Great Depression, Civic Opera bankrupt soon after. Now home to the Lyric Opera, they're very successful. Back to our right. So around here, you can see below the next set of buildings, not to the basement, to the train tracks. All the buildings to our right along the river are built atop air rights. And that means the developers bought the air above the train tracks from the railroad companies to build and develop buildings above that space. Huge project right now being built in Manhattan called Hudson Yards, all on air rights. Gonna have Gateway Centers 1 and 2, 65, 67, Black Box Modern, Skidmore. Background to our right, green glass, black cladding, slope roof, Modern, 83, Skidmore. And taller stone clad building to our right is Postmodern, 92, Skidmore. So all 4 buildings by the same firm, 65 to 92. An evolution of architecture by one firm over 30 years. So again, tracks below go to and from Union Station, a short classically inspired building about a quarter block to our right, next gap, 1925. I know that most of you all aren't from Chicago, but some of you, especially adults from a certain age, have seen some of these buildings on TV. You may not realize it. If any of you all have ever seen The Untouchables, 1987, Sean Connery, Kevin Costner, have seen at the end of the baby stroller, going down the stair steps in the shootout, that was filmed in the Great Hall of Union Station. Very nice space. Adams Street, aka Route 66. And at one time, a beautiful grand concourse of the train station stood directly to our right. In the name of modernization, it was foolishly torn down back in 1969, replaced with a mediocre Gateway Center 3, 1971. A short three-story building to our right now houses a health club and corner bakery. Initially, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and back then, Tree Computer had an exchange, had a big old trading floor. They're those big trading floors that did not like a lot of interior support columns that would get in the way. Instead of using interior supports, the exit around the outside did the majority of the supporting, X-bracing. Now we'll discuss the building to our left, small red dot on the return trip. But as we clear Jackson, to our right coming up, the fourth and final of the Gateway buildings from 1983 by Jim DeStefano, who at that time worked for Skidmore. Again, pretty good example of architectural contextualism. The building fits at the site and surrounding. A graceful curve and facade, a slight bend in the river in front of us. Green glass of the building, green water of the river. I know at least a third of you all at one point, the past like 17, 18 years, have possibly seen The Dark Knight, the Batman movie made in Chicago. Opening scene, Joker and his gang are gonna rob Gotham Bank. They bust out a window in the office building to our right. Use a zip line on the rooftop of Gotham Bank where they bust in with a school bus. That's next, but in reality, the former main post office for the city of Chicago. Built in phases and finally completed in 1932. Art Deco, Graham Anderson, Probst and White. Was the world's busiest and biggest post office. Chicago, not the biggest, moving the mail order and catalog capital of the world. So it's like Sears, Marshall Field, Montgomery Ward. You're talking roughly 2.7 million square feet of space, about 62 acres all under one roof, the perfect spot on top of train track. Building itself decommissioned back in 96 and sat empty for more than 2 decades. It was purchased back in 2016, undergoing a roughly $800 million rehab, last I have read. About 90% leased up is now office space. Buildings are now LEED certified, green technology. 1 second though, pause. Usually. So on top of the 3-acre green roof, only for the tenants, we have a basketball court, walking path, half-mile jogging path. I'm not yet sure, but the small building to our right, a game of wait and see, but it's owned by the same firm. As we clear Harrison, to our right coming up, the newer main post office from 1996, not worth your nor my time, so don't worry about it. But as we clear Harrison, to our left coming up of this vacant and broke down land, at least it used to be, till 1971 was all railroad land. It was a very nice train station to our left on the corner, Grand Central Station, 1890 to 1971. About 12 years ago, 2 different developers did team up and bought most of the land to our left, the bridge above us, to the one in front of us. They had like 14 acres, a lot for any city. 12 years ago, they submitted a master plan to the city, which called for the redevelopment of that land. And all those acres, they can now build roughly 3,600 residential units. The project initially was called Riverline by Perkins and Will. So far, 2 buildings have been finished. To our left, coming up, the Cooper, that is rental. In front to our left, the Reed, 41 floors, half condo, half rental. The stone to our left, a reclaimed foundation stone from the train station, dug up from that site and reused for the Riverwalk. And I will be honest, I'm not that big of a fan of the Reed architecturally because of the parking base. Now, initial plans are for 2-story duplexes, as you see there to our left in the background on the Cooper. But this one, we have 4 floors of parking on green space in the river. Not a fan of that. Their lobby is nice, though. Underground parking next to water is very expensive, but can be done. Until 1972, a bridge did span the river at this location at Polk Street, still seeing the abutments on either side. Here to our left, going to have River City. It may remind you of a complex we saw like 10 minutes ago, Marina City. If it does, it should. Designed by the same architect, Bertrand Goldberg. The building to our left, the base, the boat is going to dock in that space. They can leave their boats in the water year round. It gets very, very cold out. They turn on bubblers in that marina so the water is moving and agitated so it does not freeze up. It was built as rental converted to condominium 7 years ago. Everyone got bought out for $90.5 million. Is now once again rental. Transmission tower to our right in the background, red and white behind Burlington. That's a part of the Chicago Fire Academy. I use it as our landmark. Very, very semi-industrial to our right, but if you ever have time while you're here, still visit the area anyway. There's an on Jefferson called Manny's. They really thick corned beef sandwiches, great potato pancakes, and good beef stew. It was like 1942. And in front to our right of the smokestacks, old Union Station power plant, 1931. Initially coal-powered, many years natural gas. So if we were to keep going in this direction for a while longer, just 10 days. As we turn in front to our south are two train bridges. The one is vertical, still used. Beyond that, Chinatown and Pington Park. As we turn, a nice view of the downtown skyline to our north and east that will pick up momentarily. Open on the city and tour. Again, welcome to Chicago. And don't forget to have rain at the bar downstairs. Won't bother her for a while. If you get cold, get a shot of Jack Daniels. Won't be cold anymore. I promise. Or a tea, or a coffee, or a blanket. You have options. I'm just saying, exercise them. Back on mic in a moment. So it's kind of hard to believe, but not that hard to believe that back in 2000, almost 95% of the tall buildings to our right did not exist. That is called the South Loop. It's mainly residential, not done yet. The newest building around here is a glass one here to our right, slight twist, 1000M, 1000 South Michigan. The last building and project by architect Helmut Jahn. He passed away 4 years ago. I myself followed that project since 2016. Skipped class, went to a meeting. If you ever fly in and out of DSW shoes, now go shop. Yeah, that's the part of the Chicago Fire Academy where the city trained firefighters. What's ironic about the Fire Academy, that over there is its location. It sits in the same site as to where Mrs. O'Leary's house and barn at one time stood. If any of y'all know the story of the Great Chicago Fire, the irony of that. The fire began in her barn October 8th, 1871. It burned for about 36 hours, killed more than 300 people, burned down more than 17,000 structures, and ruined roughly a third of the city, the size we were at that time. Just to give you a scope to how damaging and devastating it really was, her house was located at roughly Jefferson and DeKalb. DeKalb was like 1000 south. Access at 30 plus miles an hour, strong enough to create fire tornadoes in the downtown area. The river was so dirty, nasty, and polluted, it caught on fire. Buildings built of stone crumbled, and buildings built of cast iron melted. People fleeing the flames, running north towards the city limits, east towards the lakefront. Some running north along the lakefront itself. Once they got to the old city cemetery, some people jumped to the empty grave pits of that cemetery for protection. In those years, that cemetery was being relocated from the lakefront to the high water table. Today, that same piece of land is now called Lincoln Park. So once we are closer, of course, Sears Tower, tall pink building, barrels on top. But in the background of that building back there, look, it has toothpicks on top. Those toothpicks are called spires. And spires are considered to be part of the architectural integrity of the building, which means they count towards the height when measured. So officially in the books, that building, the Franklin, is 1,007 feet. Now, sometimes spires work good in design, sometimes for me, they do not. Where do spires work? Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, New York City. Liberty Place 1 and 2, downtown Philly. Get this pyramid peak-like rooftop to the building, spire at the small final vertical thrust. Go flat rooftop building and plop a spire. Now you're kind of cheating for vanity height. That building, the Franklin, without the spires, is 887 feet tall. For context, Titanic was 883 feet long, so almost the same. Tall limestone clad building to our northeast, graceful setbacks, and 30-foot statue on top, Chicago Board of Trade Building, 1930. Art Deco by Holabird and Root. 30-foot statue on top. Roman got a series, got us a grain in agriculture. Some may recognize the building as being Wayne Enterprises from Batman Begins. All is going to have an affinity for the modern residential high-rise to our right with the articulated balconies and the dash pattern just goes by its address. So, of course, and they come with a few nicknames of my own, like the Morse Code Building or the File Cabinet Building. 235 West Van Buren, Perkins and Will. About a mile to our right, far background, painted tan, narrow round of vertical slits, is a jail. Federal. Chicago Metropolitan Corrections Facility, 1975, architect Harry Weiss. Taller, pink, granite-clad building into our right, barrels on top. This is an office building with a very unusual shape. You start with a 6-sided base, but you end up with an 8-sided tower. Just goes by its address, 311 South Wacker. The barrels on top serve no structural purpose, they're for decoration only. When being planned, they're going to have 3 buildings side by side at roughly equal height. Other 2 were not built. Overbuilding, real estate bust, late 80s, early 90s. One side is green space, one side is a parking lot. So this past summer was announced a developer may want to build an office building on that green space, but the same architects who did that one right there. I don't have that much info, but here is a rendering, so stay tuned. That's all I can say right now. It's not bad. And I did kind of tease this earlier. Here to our right on the core of this building is a partial map of downtown. South branch of the Chicago River, red dot is this building where it sits in the street bridges saying you are here. North branch, main branch where all 3 lines come together, Wolf Point. Again, I will be honest, pre-map, no one cared about this building. Now you can't not talk about it. So you know what? Good on them. 1971. And to our right, in this next gap, the granddaddy of them all. A beautiful, albeit neck-breaking and breathtaking views you can see of the Sears / don't you ever talk about that other name of my presence? Tower. Tallest building in the world from 1974 to 1996. Architect Bruce Graham, engineer Fazlur Khan, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. We're getting a 10-story tall building rising to a height of 1,451 feet or 442 meters to the roof. Broadcast antennas that you have on top are not considered architectural. They don't count in the height. If they did, 1729. Building itself composed of 9 tubes bundled together. The building itself ascends in height. Those tubes drop off at different floors. Most of the wind load and sway overall strength of the building. 2 drop off at the 50th, 2 more at the 66th, 3 at the 90th. When they crystal clear day, air-wise, you can see 4 states from the top. Illinois will be iron. Indiana to the southeast, Michigan to the east across the lake, Wisconsin to our north. Daylight hours are 3 minutes longer on top versus ground level because of your elevation. Building itself engineered to sway up to 18 inches in very, very, very high winds. It lost its title of being world's tallest in 1990.
This is the Boeing headquarters in Chicago.
Like one of them for Malaysia opened up by architect Caesar Pelly. They have ornamental spires on top like Trump Tower, the Franklin, Empire State, which count. Against Sears and Big John of broadcast antennas, which don't count. That's pretty much like me, sitting in my tippy toes and wearing high heels and claiming to be 5'7". A total downright lie. Never have been, never will be. 5'4.5", thank you very much. Doesn't matter though, all been blown underwater by the Persian Gulf. The Burj Khalifa over Dubai, 2,717 feet for the John Hancock on top of Sears. Right now, this country has a height limit of 2,000 feet to the FAA. Stupid rule. Real fast to our right, twins. If you notice how the corners on both towers serrated like a knife, giving you 16 corner offices per floor times 2 buildings times 40 floors. So no fighting amongst the executives. Slab of limestone to our left currently is 2 North Riverside Plaza. I like the original name from 1929 better. Chicago Daily News Building by Halliburton and Art Deco. And to our left down Madison, a two-tone blue glass building, since they remind them of an oversized cash register, some say a waterfall. Postmodern, 87, architect Helmut Jahn. Until a few years ago, in front to our left, Boeing. The building itself, though, is 1990 by Perkins and Will. Same firm, dash building. What's cool about this one is its engineering. You know, that steel truss on top, that steel truss also support and suspend the southwest corner. Under the southwest corner, at the base at ground level, is a switching point where the train tracks crisscross each other. Very dense. Not a lot of room to drill down for the foundation. They weren't going to move active train tracks for a building. Along the river's edge, no problem. Southwest corner, problem. Instead of the southwest corner being fully supported from the ground up, like you see on the riverside, that southwest corner is also partially suspended from the top down via that steel truss. That southwest corner is being partially cantilevered. Think of a diving board for a swimming pool. One end is anchored to the earth. The boat hangs out freely and securely over the water. Have time while you're here. Walk through this space here to our right. Nice views from it. Again, by Getz Partners. These same architecture firms that are building here to our right. Next Gap, kind of blue and purple in the glass here to our right. 155 North Wacker, 2009. Again, same firm. It was 150 here to our left with a height to width ratio kind of off the charts. Now, all tall buildings, all of them, sway back and forth in the wind a bit, some more than others. They put a model of 150 through a wind tunnel test pre-construction, moving back and forth more than the engineers like. To help alleviate some of that sway on top of a damper system. This building, more specifically, a tuned slosh damper. On top are 12 giant tanks of water. Right on this tank's hold, 160,000 gallons. It's all about inertia. Think of a ballast tank on a boat. If the wind pushes the building in one direction, water in those tanks slosh to the other side to counteract the forces of those winds. Those water tanks can also be used to secondary fire suppression systems. Great movie. You're looking taller, behind board. But as we transition back to the main branch, in front of us and on the third glory, a full frontal view merchandise mart. 1 block wide, half block deep, 25 stories tall. Lost its title of being world's largest in 1943 with the opening of the Pentagon. 3 buildings side by side to our right that have one thing in common. All 3 by the same architecture firm over 20 years. Tom Edison and Fox of New York. Same firm, tall pink building barrels on top in front of Sears. Dead center, green glass and curved is 333 West Wacker, 1983, oldest of these 3. And the roadway here to our right is Wacker Drive, named for Charles Wacker, the first head of the Chicago Planning Commission. It's one of the first bi-level roadways built anywhere, here to help separate the traffic. Initially, lower level was for trucks, so you can load and unload all your goods to the buildings along the roadway. That's what the ugly stuff is, out of sight, out of mind. Upper level, cars and pedestrians. And of course, some of the car chasing to the dark side and Blues Brothers take place on Lower Wacker. If you've never seen the Blues Brothers, you've seen a lot in life. It's a great classic, never seen that movie years later. Here, I can talk about some of the TV shows and movies that have been made in Chicago over the years, especially in my lifetime. And one of my favorites is The Digital Appearance for 1993. Also Midnight and I have that after Russ with Candyman. Look at that movie. My best friend's wedding. I don't talk about that. She doesn't been booked to her company. 1990s, Home Alone, Northern Suburbs. Late 80s, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Victor the Babysitting, Chucky, first child to play. And more recently going to have TV shows like Chicago Fire, PD and Med, Empire on Fox, Divergent Film here, Transformers 3. There was a Bollywood movie called Doom 3, and many more. In those in the 70s, Coolie High. No Future Good Times. Before My Time, Bob Newhart. And all the ornamentation, beautiful columns on top, classically inspired, 1927, Graham Anderson, Groves in white, base, shaft, capital, 87, respect, 27, stop repeating 27, respect, something kind of similar, next gap. First slash in the building for the first setback. Second slash for the roof line. Third slash for the building to the left, and small side profile. Respect. And certainly not to dampen anyone's mood or spirit, the worst disaster to ever happen to Chicago in terms of loss of life have been ready to our right coming up on the river. July 24th, 1915. It's called the Eastland disaster. EASTLAND. Short version, boat tied up here to our right. Gonna take 2,500 people to Michigan City for their picnic. The vessel always had balance and ballast tank problems. They added extra lifeboats. It was 3 years after Titanic, top heavy, unstable, but designed very well. It rolled over onto its side right here in the river, killing more than 800 people. Again, July 24th, 1915. To our right coming up, pediments by the doorways. Pediments on top reminds of a Greek temple or a government building. Postmodern, 92. 77 West Wacker, the Ricardo Bofill of Spain, Jim DeStefano of Chicago. If you ever saw The Negotiator with Samuel L. Jackson, you recognize this building. You step down one of the brutalist and somewhat stubby 55 West Wacker, 1968. Always kind of reminded me of a giant pound sign or hashtag on your telephone. But you notice the roof line on 55 is being respected by the building to its left. And 35 West Wacker, 1989 by Kevin Roche and John Dinkley. That is headquarters to Lil Burnett. The advertising firm that's given up all icons like Kermit the Tiger, Jolly Green Giant, that will pop. I don't see much about the hotel to our right because for me, kind of ruins the street wall. Everything else is nice and flush against the sidewalk. That building is set back, and personally, I just don't like the design. I have never gone to the Wick Hotel to our right at Staten Lake by Jackie Koo, the rooftop bar. Everyone kind of falls in love with that green terracotta and gold leaf plant building 2 blocks in front to our right. That is real gold leaf on top. The carbide and carbon building from 1929, Art Deco by the Burnham brothers. The sons of city planner and architect Daniel Burnham. It's rumored they got the influence from a champagne bottle. Of course, this green gold foil around top. Also realized designed and built during Prohibition. But the knows that bad. Now a hotel. And to its right, looks like a sharp Prudential Plaza number 2, 1990. Spires on buildings like that. Fine. Nice street walk to our right, building side by side. Very slender neo-Gothic building, initially called Mather Tower. That's not the original crown on top. Let's walk a different color white. The original crown picked it up around 2000. Structural problem. They built a prefabricated crown on a barge built on top of the helicopter. Skinniest skyscraper in Chicago, now a hotel. Which in there like a cap after a root canal is an addition for the building right next door. Initially, the London Guarantee and Accident Building, 1923. Back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, very popular jazz club in the base called London House. Building's been renovated, now a hotel called London House. Ever have time while you're here, visit the rooftop bar, great views, great drinks. With the buildings to our right now arrived, 1803 at this spot was constructed Fort Dearborn. And Fort Dearborn was the westernmost government outpost of the then United States. But now to our left, to near Michigan Avenue, now coming into view, the elegant Gothic Revival Tribune Tower, 1925. Back in 1922, the paper sponsored the International Architectural Competition. Grand prize, $100,000 to any architect who could design the world's most beautiful building. Over 250 entries, that design won. Submitted by 2 New York architects, John Meetown, Raymond Hood. Raymond Hood went on to help design Rockefeller Center. There's a pinnacle of those upside-down L's called flying buttresses, known for the Gothic style. To our left, the Apple Store by Foster and Partners of London, 2017. All this kind of reminded me of a half-open MacBook Pro. Same location with Jean-Baptiste Dusable in his cabin and first trading post to the founder of Chicago. To our left, coming up with a peacock emblem on top, NBC Tower. Limestone cladding, streamlined verticality, setbacks in the building rises. Art Deco, right? 1920s, 1930s, right? Not that one. Postmodern, Echo Deco, Art Deco. 1989, Adrian Smith again saying go to the Trump Tower and Burj Khalifa, skip on Owens and Merrill. But where's NBC headquarters? 30 Rock, Art Deco and Streamline. Taking some personality from 30 Rock with that verticality, some personality from Tribute Tower with the flying buttresses, and mashing everything together. So eventually, something will be built in the parking lot here to our left behind the tent. As of now, though, no plan. I hope whatever does happen, it's awesome. Sculpture to our left on the bridge coming up, Chicago, Rising from the Lake by Milton Horn, 1954. Initially on a parking garage. Parking garage torn down back in 83. Sculpture was removed. See you all. Don't see a flask. Life. And no, Oprah never lived there. Tom Cruise did, Oprah did not. Sammy Sosa did, Oprah did not. Other five Great Lakes, but the only one that lies entirely the boundaries of this country. The five Great Lakes, second deepest, maximum depth to the Chicago flag. 2 blue stripes, 3 white stripes, 4 red stars. Each white stripe for a section of the city. Top white stripe, north side. Bottom white stripe, south side. Middle white stripe, west side. There's no east side, you have the lake. East side neighborhoods, no east side section. Top blue stripe for the north branch of the river and lake. Bottom blue stripe, south branch of the river and canal. Fort Dearborn, 1803. Another star, Great Chicago Fire. Another star, World Columbian Exposition, 1893. Another star, Century of Progress World's Fair, 1933-34. Stars in the flag of the 4 F's. Fort, Fire, Fair, and Fair. As we spin a fair view of the downtown skyline to our west, different heights, shapes, colors, materials, and air visibilities were built in. They all have their own personality and say something different. So, welcome to my office. And we shall be back to the dock in like 5 to 10 minutes. There are no bathrooms on that. What was your best and closest option? Next name is Jeannie Gang. She's headquartered here in Chicago, initially called Vista Tower. Now, the residence at St. Regis, bottom 10 floors, going to have a roughly 200-room hotel. They're above about 400 condos. As you can see, leaves like 5 to 6 different shades of green glass transporting. That space near the top, there's no glass. That is called a blow-through floor. They would not add glass to that space. It will stay open, as you see, to allow the air and wind to flow through the building that helps with the structure's stability. North Riverside has 12 tanks of water on top and hold roughly more on top, the Hotel Intercontinental. There's nothing in that dome but mechanical state. 1929, initially called the Medina Athletic Club for the Shriners. It's a men's club and hotel. So look around yourselves. Don't forget your cameras, glasses, cell phones, purses, bags, any personal belongings here by the exit ramp. If you all have comments for me, be at the top of those stairs. While you're in Chicago, if you can, get out of downtown. The city is so much more than you have seen on this tour. It is 230 square miles of stuff. If you like anything and everything Frank Lloyd Wright, jump on the Green Line, head out west to Oak Park, a suburb 10 miles west from where we are. Have young kids, take them to the Lincoln Park Zoo. It's free, or perhaps visit the Home Alone house in Winnetka. For the adults, for the enclosed rooftop bar, or 2, perhaps 3, I would not judge. And if you taught anyone anything today, when you walk in the streets of Chicago and your own hometown, no matter how big or how small, don't just look forward, but also look up and appreciate the built-up environment around you. But on behalf of all of us, team, myself, captain, bartender, and crew members, hope you enjoy the city.
Chicago and the iconic Trump Tower in Chicago. These buildings, they consist of both modern buildings and neoclassical or European style architecture buildings. And Chicago has been home to the kind of the skyscraper revolution because Skidmore, Robinson Merrill, which is a designer and architect of Burj Khalifa, is also based from here. It's an iconic place. I mean, we see the river tour was very iconic and very good. I mean, then we saw a lot of skyscrapers, and then amazing thing is some were built over rail tracks, some had, the water things, and, this Chicago River permanently flows backward. So it's all this is like, really an architectural wonder of the world.
Hey, Rahul. You can go. Yeah.